Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. Let me start with some macro thoughts. Iran switches to the euro for its foreign transactions, according to several reports, including the one I was reading from Press TV. The only problem with that, it's led to the demise of Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi wanted his African dinar, and Saddam similarly was pivoting to the euro. The world's debt load has ballooned to a record $164 trillion. This is the subject of some debate, but nevertheless, let's take this lower number, which Vitor Gaspar says 164 trillion is a huge number. When we talk about the risks looming on the horizon, one of the risks has to do with the high level of public and private debt. I think a lot of people were predicting a sort of Weimar Republic type outcome, massive inflation. We haven't seen it, but it's something that we've got to keep a very close eye on. Home thoughts. I love this photo of Dame Daphne Sheldrick. The trust here between her and that elephant is breathtaking. May she rest in peace. That's from Yashar. Her face and voice will live in the memory of many a hand-reared orphan for decades as they roam the parklands of East Africa, trumpeting their freedom. Elephants don't forget, the magazine wrote. Her face and voice will live in the memory of many. Then it's a really interesting article in the New York Times talking about her childhood in a place called Gilgil. She says nursery rhymes danced off our bedroom walls and hand-painted sunshine birds of Kenya adorned silk lampshades. In her book, Love, Life and Elephants, an African Love Story, became warden of Tsavo East National Park in Kenya, which is enormous and must have been even more enormous in those days because so few people would have explored it. He and Miss Sheldrick lived there and began taking in orphaned animals of all sorts with an emphasis on finding ways to reintroduce them to the wild. In 1994, Miss Sheldrick was seriously injured when a wild female elephant, with a flick of her trunk, knocked her into a pile of boulders. She thought it was one of her orphan elephants. Shattering her leg, she had made the mistake of standing between the animal and its calves. As she lay immobile, the elephant came over to her, but not, as it turned out, with hostile intent. I could feel her tusks underneath me, trying to lift me, she told the Daily Telegraph, so I knew she wasn't going to kill me. When an elephant wants to kill you, it kneels down and crushes you with its head. In an interview with 60 Minutes in 2009, Ms. Sheldrick was asked what she admired most about elephants after years spent with them. Their tremendous capacity for caring is, I think, perhaps the most amazing thing about them, she said. They have all of the best attributes of us humans and not very many of the bad. I attended a super dinner yesterday that the Australian High Commissioner hosted. The chef can be followed on Twitter at Chef Chris Wade. And this is one of the dishes, of which there are many. This is Mr. Wagyu dry rub brisket charcoal served with confit, egg yolk, whiskey and maple reduction, asparagus and pickled onion. And it was delicious. I parked myself at the front as we were in drinks and they were bringing around these delicious canapes. And I've learned tactics these days at these sorts of events. Where do you intercept the food? Where do you stand so you get served your drinks? I'd like to thank Her Excellency, the Australian High Commissioner. It was a spectacular evening of outstanding Australian gastronomy. If you are a foodie, I took 2 video clips of the chef Chris Wade describing the menu that he served to us. Both clips are about 1 minute and 6 seconds each. But have a look at the menu as you listen to him. So very, very enjoyable evening. Political reflections. Turkey's Erdogan declares early elections on June the 24th. This is a pinky year early, and you will surely win by a landslide. Howard French, who tweeted this, just imagined the way President Trump thinks about friendship and loyalty. Peak trade war, question mark. That's J.S. Blockland. He's saying if you look at, you model Google, and really we can't go very much higher. Worries about the trade war anymore. So much for global trade wars and geopolitical risk. Most risky assets are up since March 1, when Trump first announced the tariffs. That's J.S. Blockland as well. Potential bromance between Trump and Kim sends implied volatility on Korean stocks back to normal levels. And no doubt the takeaway that Mike Pompeo had gone to Pyongyang, some seriously conciliatory comments coming out of Trump, has kind of wrong-footed me for sure. I'm still not confident that North Korea gives up its most important deterrent. Did you know the Commonwealth boasts a combined gross national income of $10.7 trillion, expected to rise to $14 trillion by 2020? No, I didn't. That's a pretty sizable market right there. There are 2.4 billion people in the Commonwealth, and we need to tap into it. That's a massive talent pool, said Martin Sutherland of De La Rue. And I remember writing 11 years ago when I came back, saying that actually everyone looks at what can be dug out of the ground in Africa, but really what walks upon it is infinitely more worth. This pivot to the Commonwealth, this is a tweet of mine, I'm sure is a seriously decent trade, I said, and has made me nostalgic for that whole Commonwealth gig, whose richness is found in its body of literature. V.S. Naipaul, Salman Rushdie, phenomenal literature, and so many others. Actually, I read out of the West Indies, India, of course, Africa. Syria, Iran, and chaos in international relations leads the Asia Times, even in the context of a post-truth geopolitical environment run amok. Russian President Vladimir Putin telling his Iranian counterpart Hassan Rouhani over the phone that any further Western strikes against Syria may lead to chaos in international relations should at least be seen for what it is, a massive understatement. According to the Kremlin, Putin and Rouhani agreed what cynics are calling the FUK-US or France-UK-US strikes have damaged the chances of achieving any meaningful political resolution in Syria. Moscow, Damascus, Tehran, and Baghdad are showing a united front, even as the alleged chemical attack in Duma, the reason for the strikes, is being forcefully debunked. The key takeaway is that the US, UK, France troika, not to mention the House of Saud, has absolutely no means to influence these developing facts on the ground. Yes, but they can keep everything bleeding. Putin reportedly instructed aides to tone down anti-American rhetoric and give Trump another chance, according to a Bloomberg report via Moscow Times. One source reportedly said the Kremlin ordered officials to curb their anti-US rhetoric. Going back to those Tomahawk missiles, I said, let's be frank, these Tomahawks fired at will over Syria have put Putin in a corner. His entire political raison d'etre has been framed as a strongman. It is a neat twist, I said, that Trump is the US president that has taken Putin to a put up or shut up moment. In hindsight, it's a little bit of a choreographed missile strike. And therefore, I don't think Trump has put Putin in that corner, but the optics of it are that he has. Slippery James Comey, the worst FBI director in history, was not fired because of a phony Russian investigation where, by the way, there was no collusion except by the dead, says Trump. And Salome Anderson beat me to to it. So does it even matter that he said he fired Comey because of the Russia thing with Trump and Russia on national TV, or does nothing really matter anymore? A Chinese port with few ships is stoking fears in the Indian Ocean. This is the Hambantota port, about which I wrote in August last year when I said Sri Lanka, which gorged on Chinese debt, has had to disgorge the Hambantota port to its creditor. Currency markets: euro dollar 123.88, dollar index 89.65, Japanese yen 107.29, Swiss franc 0.9691, the pound 141.94, the Australian dollar is around 0.78, India rupee 65.765, South Korean won 10.61.64, Brazilian real 338.05, Egyptian pound 17.7096. The rand is at 11.9389. Dollar index still below 90, 89.65. I'm sticking with the 88 stock. Euro dollar pushing. I'm sure is going to cross 124. It's a little bit firmer today. Looks set to hurdle 124, but as I've said previously, it's 125.60. We've got to keep an eye on. Do you remember in March when I wrote a piece about how you should sell Facebook? It subsequently rebounded. But I said out of the 43 analysts who recommended buying Facebook shares, not one at that point had downgraded the stock over the crisis. We now learn that Facebook gets its first analyst downgrade since the Cambridge Analytica story. Research firm OTR Global cut its rating to mixed versus positive amid concern that year-over-year growth in advertisement spending moderated in the first quarter of 2018. The company's first quarter ad spending will likely rise 19 to 24% year-over-year, versus a gain of as much as 30% in the fourth quarter. The FANG trade doesn't need Facebook. Tech stocks roaring back to life after an upbeat earnings report from Netflix, which was one of my picks of the year at the beginning of the year. 10 years ago, Disney's market cap was 25 times larger than Netflix. 5 years ago, Disney's market cap was 12 times larger. Today, 1.05 times larger. That's from Charlie DiLello. That's the changing world, the age of disruption. Digital revolution, I suppose. Amazon, another example of that revolution, is eating the world. More than 100 million people globally are now paying for Amazon Prime. A sign of how Amazon has used the service to evolve from an online marketplace that struggled with profitability into an e-commerce powerhouse. The number of times Trump has tweeted about Amazon is 6. The number of Trump mentions in Bezos' annual letter, 0, which sums it up. Commodity markets: the rally in commodities continues. This is the Bloomberg Commodity Index, just below a breakout level. That's from Holger. 13th of November, I spoke about how geopolitical risk is biting back hard, and I predicted the spot crude oil market reprices further to run and will lift Brent crude over $70 a barrel. Crude is at its highest level in 40 months. Brent crude is above $73.50. Have a look at the chart from J.S. Blockland. My piece on the 13th of November last year, when I was making that prediction, was titled "The Capture of a 32-year-old wannabe king and the future price of crude oil." Base metal price surge on growing supply concerns amid US sanctions on Russia. Aluminium is at a 7-year high, plus 27% in the last 2 weeks. Nickel was up 10% for its biggest one-day rise since 2009. Gold, have a look at this chart, it's interesting, signaling to me that we're going to push higher, maybe as high as 1385, if not higher. But that chart typically signals an upside breakout. Sub-Saharan Africa economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa is estimated to have picked up to 2.6% in 2017 from 1.5% in 2016. Africa Pulse, World Bank. Zimbabwean Independence Day celebrations. The country gained independence from Britain in 1980. I read a really interesting article here on African arguments about Prime Minister Abiy in Ethiopia. And one of the quotations is Abi's biography encompasses the marvelous messiness of Ethiopian society. His personal story is Ethiopia's story. He hails from an Oromo father and an Amhara mother. He shares Islamic and Christian upbringings. He's fluent in several languages. His personal story is Ethiopia's story. Then talking about this idea, which I had not heard before, Ethiopia we net transcends historical debates. It not only exists, but is a matter of survival, common belonging, and celebration. Emphasizes the unity of humanity by weaving together Islamic and Christian teachings. For many Ethiopians, Ethiopia we net also manifests as that electrifying and inescapable feeling when watching Abebe Bikila, Haile Gebrselassie, Selassie, Deratu Tulu, Mesut Defa. Ethiopia's new prime minister has thus inherited a country in crisis, faces a wide range of complex challenges in trying to reform the political system, economy, military, and much more. Will have to lead tough negotiations and come with myriad smart and sensitive policies to steer this country of 100 million people back on track. However, in all this, he should not forget the importance of storytelling. Abiy personifies both the existential dangers and reasons for hope in the country's future. It has the ability to spin this rich heritage into a tale that oozes positivity. This is the point. His storytelling eschews the usual aloofness of politicians and speaks directly to the people's aspirations. Utilizing these skills in his tour of the country, focusing on regions that may be apprehensive about his rapid rise, he proclaimed there is neither center nor periphery to the Ethiopian identity. Together we form the nucleus of our national story. At other times, full of forward-looking imagery, concept of medema, a word that means being added to, but stresses the beauty of blending. When you inherit something, you can change it or sell it. When you borrow something, you have to handle it with care because you have to return it. And really, bottom line is like he's saying all the right things. It's very Obama-like in 2008, you know, that moment when I met somebody in the lift, a Kenyan chap, and he said, why are you so happy? He said, Obama president. You know, that very sort of inclusive language, looking forward, looking into the distance, looking into the eyes of the future. But he has some serious stakeholders to manage here. Anyone who says anything against the yes vote or against President Nkurunziza, beat him over the head and call me once you've tied him up. Government official has reported in Human Rights Watch. This is an interesting chart of selected international bond issuances of countries in sub-Saharan Africa. That's from the World Bank Africa Pulse report. South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa, this is in an interview with Bloomberg TV, sees potential for 3% growth. He really has struck all the right chords, I must say. And that's why I wrote about him, that we have to be limit long Cyril Ramaphosa. The South African all-share is down 3.01% year to date. The rand, incredibly, has strengthened 21% against the dollar since November, and that was what I was talking about in saying it's moving from a Zuma discount to a Ramaphoria premium. Dollar versus rand, seen here, my target remains 11, and it's a big buy above 12. We're back below it again. Nigerian all-share is up 6.61% so far this year. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 33.25% so far this year. It's the best performing stock market in the world. I did an interview with White Collar Magazine. Link to that is on Rich Wrap-Ups and on the front page of the website. Nation Media reported full year earnings per share declined to 22.472%. Headline revenue was down 6.18% to 10.624 billion. Profit before tax fell 20.545%. Cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year was 1.6926 billion. Earnings per share was down 22.472% at 6 shillings and 90 cents. They maintained the total dividend payout at 10 shillings a share, so substantially above earnings per share for the second year running. They said the adverse performance was mainly attributed to a shortfall in revenue arising from reduced advertising volumes following low corporate clients' activities, which were affected by the prolonged election period. Deterioration in the credit quality across the group as a result of delayed payments, particularly from the regional governments. Group turnover declined by 6.2%, net earnings was down 17.4%. They had a one-off severance of 259 million shillings. Look, my conclusions are as follows. It's clearly been a very tough period. Nevertheless, this is a Premier League franchise at a market cap of $200 million. It's probably underpriced. My concern remains that we're watching a significant Schumpeter moment in media, and I would like to see a more aggressive pivot by the nation into that future. There was a lot of interesting comments that came out of Wilfred Kiboro, who's the chairman of the nation. The exit of 8 columnists won't affect circulation. They're not as important as they think they are. There's a lot of talent out there. It reminded me of one of my first bosses, told me, Ali Khan, everyone's dispensable. And he's not wrong. And Wilfred's not wrong either. And in another comment, he said, it's not on sale to anyone. Ignore the rumors on social media. You know, the nation was founded when the Aga Khan was 23. I think it was one of his first things that he's done. His emotional attachment to it is very, very high. So I absolutely agree with what Wilfred is saying. He's also saying the amount of debt that government owes the local media houses in Kenya is large. He's saying the government owes nation media about 700 million shillings. Our digital footprint in terms of reach grew by 24% between March 2017 and March 2018. The footprint, 24%. Digital contribution grew from 1.5% in 2015 to 4% in 2017. That's interesting. So overall, I think, look, great franchise, obviously been through a difficult time. I think, as I said, I'd like to see this thing pivot into the future. Kenyan Bank's price to equity ratio via the Saiton report. Take a look. Businesses can only be confident in long-term investments if there is a transparent legal and regulatory system. We have invested in many joint ventures, such as in Kenya, for over 40 years. This is Martin Sutherland, Chief Executive of De La Rue, comments at the Commonwealth CHOGM 2018. Kenya shilling 100.4. This is at a 2018 high. Nairobi all shares come off the boil. We're now only up 7.97% year to date. We've been in slip mode, but I think by next week we should be turning higher again. NSE 20 up 0.89% year to date. Twiga Foods to offer blockchain-based microloans to food kiosk owners in Kenya. Very clever move. Have a read about that. Grant Brooker, I follow on Twitter, is a very bright man, and he really has developed this business very effectively. Entrepreneurship remains the core engine of growth in any diverse and growing economy. This is Saiton, the host. Bonnie Tunya is moderating a conversation around what it takes to start a business with some very interesting guests. So if you have time on Saturday, do visit. I think it would be worthwhile. Finally, comments from the NSE, Chief Executive, Africa starved of IPOs. We were in London yesterday, and the LSE has done 17 IPOs this year. We want to address this. Indeed, they should get back to that old Kibaki-style program, which saw, for example, the divestment of the selling of shares of Safaricom. We need another big flagship IPO, sold preferably at a steep discount. Once again, thank you.